Hello everyone, I'm here to just tell you my story of when I found out I had psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. Now, I am the type of person that I really don't like to be diagnosed. And I'm sorry to say this, but I honestly don't like going to the doctors. I usually will try my best to just do like holistic or homeopathic remedies to try to feel better. It's more so eating the right things and just taking care of myself to heal and recuperate. Now, of course, there are many times when most of us do need to see a doctor. Well, the way I found out I had psoriasis is I had a bald spot like in the back of my head, and then on the nape of my neck I had a little rash. Now, as a child and a preteen, I loved experimenting with hair. I literally love doing updos and just like twists on my hair. I had done braids all over my hair. I was just very inspired by just the generations before us and all the different hairstyles. So I really like to experiment on myself and on others. So at this time, this was the late 90s, early 2000s, and I often would wear my hair in like a high bun a lot. We used to call it a messy bun, so it'd basically be like right here. But I don't know if it was just me or the people around me growing up, but in those days, in order to make the bun look bigger, we would use like scrunchies and then a lot of like hair bands. So basically, tie the hair up tight. We used to buy buckets of gel. Like I had buckets of gel because I'm from New York City. So we used to go to the beauty supply and get these buckets of gel. We had these really coarse bristled brushes and we would brush them about our hair back, and we would leave out like little baby hairs. And for those of us that had like curly hair, you'd leave out little curls on the side or on the back. But with the messy bun, you needed like the hair band, so it's like a coated rubber band. You needed one of the thicker ones, not like the really thin ones, because back in that time I had a lot of hair. And so you tie it with a band. Now, sometimes it'd be like a little bumpy or not tight enough, so you tie it with another band. And then what I would do is sometimes I would take like a scrunchie, tie it over the bands, and then I would just take my hair and I would just like put it all together, and then I would tie another band over it, and then that's like your messy bun. Well, for some reason, I had a bald spot pretty much where I used to have the bun, or sometimes I didn't wear a bun and I would just have a high ponytail or a low ponytail. Again, like hair parted to the side and slicked back. I used to do half up, half down looks as well, but the bald spot I thought was from like maybe tying my hair too tight. The thing that was weird was there was no bald spot here around my hairline. The bald spot was in the back of my head. And the rash was like right below my hairline in the back of my neck. So it was a bit concerning. And when I told my mom about this, we had just moved to another state. So she just took me to an urgent care because I didn't have like my childhood doctor, and she thought I was just having like some sort of reaction. So it wasn't like an annual checkup. It was more like, we want to urgently know what this might be. I don't know how or who this doctor was, but he took a look at it And that was it. He said, "This is psoriasis." Now, just to give you more of a time frame, this was either in 2002 or 2003. It was either or. So at that time, I was around 14, going on 15 years old. And cell phones back then were literally either flip phones or the little Nokia phones. They weren't really internet, except for eventually they had like the three-way kind of like beeper, and then there was like a sidekick. Those were the name of some phones. But internet was really not accessible on a cell phone. And at home, we had dial-up internet where you would have the phone cable that comes out the wall and you plug it into your modem. Long story short, it wasn't just like you can just whip out your phone and Google what is psoriasis. I didn't even look it up on the internet because I'm here thinking, or even my mom's thinking, well, this is just a rash and it'll go away. Because when and in what universe does a rash not go away? Anytime I would have had a rash prior to that, it would eventually go away. So he says it's psoriasis, and we're both like, okay. And then he says a description to better explain to me like what psoriasis is. And I can't for the life of me remember what he actually said. I just remember him saying something about cracking an egg into a frying pan. At that time, the analogy he made, it made sense. Me, 20-something years now, trying to tell you what he actually said about the egg in the frying pan, I have no idea. And when I do figure it out or remember, I will share. Because at that time, it made sense. Whatever it is he told me, I was like, oh, okay, so still, like, what do we do now? So he says, it could be triggered by stress. And I was 14/15 years old. So honestly, I mean, at that age, we actually all know what stress is, but not teenager stress, not adolescent stress, not mid-age stress, not being a senior and having stress. There's different levels to it. I didn't have stress of bills. I mean, I probably had stress from moving from my hometown to a different state. I probably had stress from school and trying to make good grades in a new state. Probably had stress from meeting new people. I mean, I did go through some actually stressful, traumatic experiences as a child. So I had to learn at a really young age, like, this rash is triggered by stress? Like, I'm here thinking it's because I put my buns too tight. So they have me like lay down and they give me an injection on like my lower back, like upper buttocks, and I did not know what the injection was. It basically was like a steroid shot. Again, never had an injection there, never had that injected, didn't know what it was supposed to do. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, this is the cure. At that age, like, I had activities I had done when I was a child and a preteen, but basically I moved from up north to down south. And so everything I used to do was a lot different. So what I did do was I got into like dance. I was trying to practice cheerleading because we didn't have that in New York City. Like actually the high school I wanted to go to. I wanted to be part of the dance team, but in down south, it was more like cheerleading slash dance. So it was a bit different, and the type of dance it was different. So I continued with that, and I don't know what it was. Well, I do know what it was. I had an aunt that she was always very active growing up, meaning like she used to be in and out the gym, she ate healthy, and it was just a lifestyle that I wanted for myself. So actually in high school, I started going to the gym. I know that sounds crazy, but I just felt like a young adult and I wanted to take care of my body and I wanted to practice fitness. I wasn't doing like hardcore weights. I wasn't taking no supplements for, you know, weightlifting. I mean, again, this is early 2000s. There wasn't even ways for me to research more information on that. It wasn't what it is today. It wasn't a trend. But I would work out so I can just stay fit because I didn't have access to things I did up north, meaning how physically active I was outside and just things of that sort. So I also learned about Atkins. So I babysat for a family, and the mother, she introduced me to Atkins. And when I saw her eat in a way that was like no carb, that attracted me. Now, even at that age, I wasn't into like high fat, low carb. I was more like interested in vegetables. I mean, my taste buds were changing. I was just like, wow, I've never really enjoyed a salad. I didn't know how great it can be. I was introducing myself to like different ways to eat broccoli and Brussels sprouts and mushrooms. Things as a child, like I would not even touch because our taste buds are different. We're just not interested in onions and mushrooms and salads. I mean, some of us are, but I definitely believe as you grow up, your taste buds change. And for me, I was starting to have a want for it. Like my body was telling me, you need vegetables, you need exercise. It was just something that I felt. And then I had this rash. So again, this is all happening at the same time. It's like self-discovery. You're a teenager. I was never into TV, so I wasn't watching anything on TV. The whole Atkins trend, it was big. So were a lot of other diets back in that day. But what I did with Atkins was I just basically didn't eat potatoes. I didn't eat bread. I didn't eat any sugar. I limited myself to very rarely eating fruits. And at that age, I didn't actually have a taste for fruit. I was always a person that liked savory, salty, spicy type of foods. And this says a lot because even at that age, my body was telling me like what I should stay away from and what my body's actually craving. So I didn't eat sugar even before Atkins because for some reason I would always get really bad dizzy spells when I ate sugar. Like I wasn't a sugar eating kid. That was not my thing. For snacks, I would eat chips. Like it was just like I have a sister and we were so much opposites. Like she liked chocolate and I liked salt and vinegar potato chips. You know, we were just totally opposite. I liked spicy foods from a young age, but that's because of my culture and that's like part of what we eat. So yeah, I was always salty, spicy girl. And so Atkins to me I liked because I was working out. I was in shape, like I wasn't overweight or anything. And then I had this rash. And then I found out it's triggered by stress. So I remember still going to the gym. And again, I wasn't lifting weights. I literally would be doing like the bicycle and the treadmill and the elliptical, and that's really it. just to get some cardio in. And I would get dizzy spells. I would get such bad dizzy spells. So I think that doctor also prescribed me a cream. And also, the family I babysat for that introduced me to Atkins, it wasn't like they pushed it on me. It's just I observed it and I was like, oh, I want to cut out carbs too. And I even had the Atkins book and I would read it. And I still have it somewhere. But I just found it so interesting that you can use your body's own like stored fat for energy. And after you cut out carbs for a certain amount of time, your body goes through a process where it basically like resets how it burns fat and what carbohydrates are, what are simple or complex carbohydrates. I don't know all the terminologies right now because I literally get like brain farts all the time. It's so hard for me to think nowadays and get words out my mouth. So I'm trying to recall all this. So I figured I'd just get carbohydrates from different vegetables. And the rash was just always there. Like it never went away. Oh yeah. So what I was saying about the family that I babysat for, when I had told her, because it was actually like my mom's friend, and I was like the children's babysitter. Well, she knew a little about psoriasis. I believe she had like bouts of it, and she would tell me she took a certain cream. So I felt glad to know that there's someone in this world that knows what I have. I didn't understand for many, many years how like rare it is to have been that young and have something that someone a lot older than me at that time also has or has had. So I thought if she got better from taking cream, like I'm going to get better from taking cream, it's going to go away. So say 14, 15, 16, 17. I mean, along those years, I would get little patches of it come up somewhere else. Like the rash kept growing bigger and bigger where it was on my back. And then I had it all over my scalp. And that really broke my heart because literally I was like 5, 6 years old telling my mom, like, don't touch my hair, because I would not even go to the hair salon and let the stylist cut or trim my hair at that age because I was just a very opinionated child and it felt so overprotective of my hair. And so I always styled it myself, like always, like since I was allowed to until today. So I couldn't do my updos anymore in high school. Like I could not. I couldn't experiment. I did try to experiment with hair dye, but it got to the point that psoriasis was all over my scalp. Like it was so hard to use gel on my hair, and this was big back then for my styles for my hair because my scalp had psoriasis. And if you don't know what scalp psoriasis looks like my whole head was full of flakes. And at that time, it was embarrassing because it couldn't look like dandruff. And that's what I actually thought it was, because when I first got the rash, it was on my neck and the back of my head. I didn't know what I had all over my scalp was psoriasis. And when I tell you it was all over my scalp, it was all over. So it was very frustrating just living with that. And I didn't know much about the different type of ointments back then. I didn't know I actually had scalp psoriasis. I still had this large bald spot in the back of my head on top of that. It basically was like where the bald spot and the rash was, they were starting to connect. So I had this rash with this really big bald spot and then the rash in the bald spot. So when I first felt the bald spot, I thought it was just a bald spot. But I guess what the doctor saw was like I actually had psoriasis in the bald spot. So whatever the injection was, maybe it helped for a certain period of time. I don't know. All I know is I struggled with what I thought was crazy dandruff in high school. And back then, I even tried like Head and Shoulders and the Neutrogena. It's like the coal tar shampoo. Nothing worked. And after I graduated from high school, I had flare-ups. I mean, that's when I first started to see it go on my arms, and just random little places it would pop up. And I did, work, and I had my insurance, and I'd go see a dermatologist, and they would say like, oh yeah, this is psoriasis. And I remember countless different dermatologist visits, different prescription creams, and it never went away. It wasn't until I was, I think, 19 that I found out through one of the dermatologist offices, I believe, or actually, I think I saw in a newspaper back then about a clinical study on psoriasis. So it was in person, and I did go, and I just basically felt like a lab rat. Like, they asked me so many questions. Mind you, I'm 19, and they examined my body. I guess they were grading me like, how much of a percentage of your body do you have psoriasis and do you have in certain areas? And I even was told then, like, wow, you're very young to have it. This is something we normally see in like mid-age to elderly people. So we think you'd be a great candidate. So they actually asked me a question, basically telling or asking me, do you plan to have kids? And I was like, yeah. And they said, because we don't know what the effects will be on your reproductive system and your future children. We don't know if taking this, you will ever be able to have children. I know for some of you right now hearing this, that's really not what they say today, but it still is. If you read the side effects of a lot of these medications for psoriasis, they don't have enough information to know what effect it will have on children or being pregnant with children while on this medication. And so I had asked them at the clinical study, like, is this something that I can take and then get off if I want to have children? And they did tell me yes, and they told me like a period of time to wait, but they didn't have enough information back then, especially, to confirm if I should ever get off of it, one, or two, can I even, or will I be able to have children, or what effects it will have? So when I found out that, and then the amount of time and visits and this medication I would be part of trialing, I just couldn't in my heart accept it. I couldn't commit to that. I literally felt like a lab rat. And I know that's so sad to say, but it's so true. It was so scary. And I just turned it down. And I was so young. I think I just never called them back or never went back because I was scared. I remember seeing another dermatologist, and they told me about a biologic treatment to go on. They also told me about creams, and this is way in the beginning when they first started like biologic treatments for psoriasis. And I had insurance, and through my employer, and then I went to the pharmacy, and I think just for a cream after insurance, I was gonna pay $200 something, and then for the biologic, I was gonna pay $2,000 something. And then I was like, I don't even make that much a month. Like, I was 19 years old. So I decided then, like, hey, it's not for you. I went on getting medication and for years just not taking medication. And when a rash would come up, I would try everything possible to heal it. When I tell you along the years I've tried everything, I have tried everything. I've tried being vegan. I've tried, well, no nightshade vegetables, which is basically plants or vegetables that grow in the shade or in the night. Basically like tomatoes, peppers, potatoes, eggplant, I believe. There's a couple others. I've tried no gluten. I've tried no dairy. I've tried no refined sugars or no processed foods. I stopped eating sugar 100%. I have tried getting more vitamin D. I've tried taking vitamin D supplements. I've tried different oils, like every type of natural oil possible. Wrapping myself with the saran wrap after putting the oils on. I've tried like bentonite clay. I've tried every detox possible. I even went to tanning beds because of the type of exposure from there's different type of tanning beds. And I have to admit that there's going to be a lot of controversy on this for any of you guys listening, but I believe there's like UVA and UVB. I cannot remember because I haven't been to tanning bed in years, but there's a certain one, I would try both, and there was a certain one that what would end up happening is my scales would decrease, the redness would decrease, and I would have white patches. So it would look like vitiligo. But when I tell you it would be from this to like this being a white patch, that's such a relief. And yes, there are side effects and risks to everything, right? They say everything, literally everything in this world, as even breathing in this air can cause cancer. But when you are young and you don't want to get on these thousands of dollar medications, you have something that you have no cure for, then, I tried it. And honestly, I don't have bad things to say about the tanning bed. I wouldn't go excessively. I wouldn't go to get dark. You don't go and stay in for 30 minutes. Actually, by law, you can only stay a certain amount of time. And when you go to the tanning salons, they actually rate you depending on like how easily you burn. So again, you have to be responsible and tell the truth. And like if you burn to go to the tanning bed, honestly, you shouldn't be going to the tanning bed. So if someone like me, like I was desperate, and it actually did provide some relief. That's not all I tried. I mean, I've tried different supplements because once internet was like expanding and there was ways to like look things up, actually, I would try to piece together like what can be the cure. I've tried different teas, different herbs. I've tried acupuncture. I went to a Korean acupuncture place, and they specialize in like herbs mixtures depending on like what your ailments are. I was prescribed from them like certain herbs to take. I've tried just every type of remedy I've ever researched. I've tried researching and like detoxing different organs within me to see if like, oh, is my liver causing this? Is it my kidney causing this? And the list goes on. And actually, I can eventually share some of the things I've tried and tell you what helped and what didn't. I basically must have tried every type of topical cream there was. And when I tell you there are side effects to the topical creams, there are. I started to grow hair on my face, and your skin will get so thin on those topical creams that the skin will just rip open if you like scratch it or bang against something. But your skin will also rip open if you bang against something or scratch with psoriasis. So psoriasis, the skin is like thick. It thickens if you don't exfoliate or soak in water, oils. But if you use the steroid creams, which usually you cannot use them for more than a week at a time, and you can't use them in your face or private areas that, you know, areas that just are very sensitive. You cannot use steroid creams there. But if the skin's too thin from the steroid creams, it's the exact opposite of like having psoriasis. So it still has the same effect where your skin is easily damaged and you have to be very sensitive. So my career was definitely affected with having this, because if you would ask me as a child what I want to be when I grow up, it would have been so different from where I am today. If you ask me as a teenager what I want to be as I grow up, it's different from what I want to be today. Basically, I had to modify my career around this condition. I know that's hard to hear, but I wanted to go to school for one thing, and I wanted to practice and specialize in another. That way I have a degree and I also have like a hobby / career that I do on the side. And ultimately, a combination of my degree and my experience in the field I wanted to work in and specialize in, that I can become ultimately what I thought I was destined to be. I always thought I was going to be like an editor of a magazine. Mind you, this is now mid-2000s. Actually, when I wanted to be an editor of a magazine or owner of a magazine, this was my childhood dream. This was before it was like popular. I just loved magazines and making collages as a child. Like just going to the supermarket and seeing like all those magazines like right there in the aisle by the cash register. Like that was a thing back then, and that I loved that. I loved picking up a magazine and just like looking at all the pages. Like I just loved it. So I'm not going to go into exactly what I wanted to be when I grow up, even though I just told you. But let's just say my love of hair and my love for like literature and art, I wanted to combine the two. So I wanted to have experience in photography and being like a master hairstylist in New York City, and journalism and marketing. And then I was like, well, I'm going to be a great like editor or create my own magazine and my own brand. I did. I went to cosmetology school. I actually started doing hair as a preteen, like 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Like I would do it for my friends. I would do it on my mother, my cousins, my aunts, my sisters. I would start getting paid for it in high school. Got paid for it after high school. I was an assistant in a salon in New York City, and more than one. I would do clients on the side. I was just destined to stay in that field and become like a master hairstylist. But when I tell you, the joint pains started coming in. This is before I knew I had psoriatic arthritis, but I would like be bending over to wash someone's hair and my back was stuck. My arms were cramped. I would, for example, be blow drying someone's hair, and I would drop the brush and I couldn't grasp the hair blower. I would be coloring hair And the gloves, like my hands would go numb. Like the gloves, they weren't tight, but they hurt. Like my fingers hurt so bad. And I couldn't hold like the brush. We're doing highlights. We have like a comb we use with foils and a hair color brush. And you have to do intricate like work with your hands because you're making the highlights. Meaning you're pulling the different strands of hair to take out to brush on with color. But I couldn't multitask with my hands. I would have like my clips and my scissors on like a waistband that we have. And I just couldn't grab things. Like I would drop things all the time. And my hands being in water so much. I just remember like cuts and like ripping open. Oh, that's another thing. You can get a cut a lot in that industry just because your hands get so dry from all the chemicals and you're working with scissors and like aluminum foil and all these things, and you're always working with your hands. So your hands get banged and bruised. My nails hurt so bad, just I guess from all the chemicals and being watered so much. And I want to say around that time is the first time ever seeing psoriasis on my face. And it drove me crazy because as much as I loved doing hair, I have to admit, I actually loved makeup a lot more. Makeup is something, of course, as a teenager, my mom didn't let me put on, but makeup was, I would kind of say, my first love. I have a whole story on why I love makeup, but now I have a love and hate relationship with it because I loved makeup for the right reasons. I loved makeup because it accentuated your natural beauty. So let's say you have long eyelashes. Well, you want to make them stand out even more. Then you use a lash curler and you just put mascara at the tips. Like you don't have to have like spider leg eyes. Let's say you have really nice cheekbones. Well, then you want to highlight that with some blush on the apples of your cheeks or a little bronzer, in the shadows of the cheeks. I just feel like less is more. But going more into the years, what I loved, which is enhancing your natural beauty, is what I started to hate, because then I had to 100% use like full coverage makeup to mask psoriasis. Like it was just so disheartening. Like I used to love basically wearing no makeup and then just using like a really fun eyeshadow and mascara and like a bright lip, to now having to wear concealer, like the full maximum coverage cover tattoo set concealer and foundation. And then I had to apply color on my face since I had none because I had so much full coverage makeup, for it throughout the day within a matter of hours to just start flaking away with the psoriasis that was on my face. It's a lot. It's a lot of experiences or horror stories I could tell you. But I'm sorry to say, but I ended up having to stop doing hair. I don't know, I'm gonna get emotional. Anyways, I did do other things instead of hair. I still have to pay the bills. I feel like I became a shadow of myself. I became overcome with, I want to do this, and I tried to do that, and then because of my condition, it's like I didn't lose my motivation. I just accepted, well, I can't do that right now, but I still will do that one day, and I'll still do it sometimes. I'll still do it on the side. So I did a couple like different jobs in transition from like doing hair part-time. And then more things started to happen. A lot more things. One of them would be I would just be walking and I would get this like really sharp pain in my hip or my leg and my back, and I would fall. Basically bedridden most times. Like I'd try to get up out of bed and I'm like, oh no, I can't roll over. I would have like electricity running through my fingers and arms and my legs. Sometimes I would feel like my hips were like, just, there was so much pain in my hip bones, like to lift my leg, to try to put my foot on the steering wheel. I couldn't feel the steering wheel while driving. Like my wrists hurt, my elbows hurt. When I was trying to start getting ready, I couldn't, well, I still can't do these things. I would lift my arms and then I can't lift my arms above my head to do my hair. So what used to be of me with like, oh, I do updos, I do makeup, I became, it's not that I was plain Jane, I was unable to do these things. So I wore my hair natural, I stopped dyeing my hair. I still had to put on makeup so I can go outside in public. But there was a lot of times I didn't. And those are the times that I did get like just questions. And I just remember one time, this was in New York City because I was living there, and I was on the train and I did have psoriasis. This is by the time it spread to my legs and arms. And, you know, everyone that's really close to me that actually knew I had this, they're like, it doesn't even look bad. Like, you know, it's part of your body. Don't be ashamed. And I was like, yeah, you know, you're right. The looks I had, I mean, people literally acted like I was contagious. I'm talking about strangers. And other people, and I brought this up in like one of my last videos, but other people will literally question you. Like strangers, like people that work in the supermarket or the little corner stores, like, you have something in your forehead. Or, what is that? Again, it's not that I was offended, it's just, how would I expect them to understand? And do I have the time to explain it to them? Let's just fast forward. Let's fast forward to today. I no longer have the patience and ability to stay silent. I want to shout from the rooftops that I have this. Everybody that I see, I literally feel like saying, this is what I have. Do you know what this is? Like, there's so many instances recently where I don't mind providing this information to strangers, to people that don't have it, to people that do have it, what my struggles are, what I go through, because I went so many years living in silence and keeping this a secret that now I feel I deserve to share my story. And that is the only reason why I went on here without no makeup, because I am no longer afraid to show that this is who I really, let's correct this. It's not who I really am, but it is what I'm really going through. And I made a commitment to myself that I'm not going to let fear rule my life. The reason why I say this is because it came to a point in time where I was like, why do I have this? Think long and hard to yourself. This is me talking to myself. Why do you have this? Is it for you to hide? Is it for you to have suffered all these years? All these, I'm talking about horror. I have horror stories. You won't see me in public wearing a white shirt. I mean, literally, you will see marks of red all over my shirt come through. Like, it's a lot of different horror stories. This is years of not being able to go to the beach, not being able to go to the park with any kids, not being able to go to theme parks, not going to family functions, leaving a career I thought I was destined for, not being in relationships. It's a lot. I mean, the list can go on. And then I had to sit and ask myself to know, like, what is the purpose of this? I asked myself this. This is a self issue, because the reason is, what am I going to do about this? And when I came to the realization that, there's just one thing you haven't done yet and you haven't tried. And that is sharing your story. Yeah, I can tell the person at the supermarket or a stranger, in the pharmacy, or anyone that asks. I share it. I willingly share it now so they're aware. Because I'm not saying that this is a disability, but like, it is to me. It has made me unable to physically and mentally do things. It's just such an impact that it's made on my life, because I know I mentioned a couple symptoms that seem like it's not related to psoriasis, but I can guarantee you that there are others out there that have psoriasis that have the aches and pains that I do. And a lot of other symptoms I probably do too, because I have a way lot more. I was just trying to tell you like a little timeline of how things progressed. So what I realized that I haven't done is shared my story. And as I said before, I'm willing to shout it from the mountaintops, because I will not go down. Like, I would not let this go down in vain. Like, this happened for a reason. And I am going to overcome this. I don't like to hear there is no cure, because I want to be living proof that, yes, there is a cure. Even though I tried everything possible, I eliminated everything I could from my diet, I reintroduced certain foods back into my diet. I have had to be scared of what I eat and drink and all the chemicals that are in it and what it could do to my body, and mentally too. Mentally, I had to always be like, I am just like a feather, like floating through. Like, I had to think nice, calm, zen thoughts to always be like, don't stress. But that's not reality. And living like that, again, it's instilled so much fear in me. It's like, well, just put me in a bubble and float me off in the sea. Like, what am I supposed to touch? What am I supposed to do? I can't wash my clothes with normal detergent. I can't use normal soap to wash my dishes. I can't use normal toothpaste. I can't use normal deodorant. That is all fine. I love that. I love learning how to create my own products. I love that I am, basically like focusing on holistic and homeopathic remedies and tinctures for everything. I love that, because that is knowledge that I can share. That is what our ancestors did. But what I don't love is there is no cure for this, and I will never accept that. So, what ended up happening is I kept falling and having issues driving and rolling over out of bed. And so I started to have fainting spells. I didn't actually faint, but when I tell you, I've never fainted, but I still get it. I get such bad dizzy spells that I have to sit or lay down right away, or else gravity is going to pull some liquids up and liquids down. Like, I'm sweating. Everything starts to panic because I feel so sick. Again, That's actually not stress. That's me thinking I'm a normal person in society, walking down the aisle in the supermarket, all of a sudden, dizziness, like warning alerts in my head, like, oh no, something's wrong, out the blue, no reason. This can happen when I'm sitting in the car listening to some nice music, nothing that is making me like have my heart beat out my chest, and oh no, like I'm sweating, I'm dizzy, I'm on the highway, like what do I do? Like now I feel so sick. Not me working myself up. This is me trying to be at peace, do normal things, and I don't feel good. Aside from that, same thing. Let's say the grocery store pushing a cart. We'll use that one again. And all of a sudden, I have a pain in my hip, and now I can't lift my leg. Never didn't cross my mind. Most times I have like work to go to right after. I do an errand, and no, I'm not trying to have this happen to my hip right now. That's another thing. I really, really, really had to learn to slow down. And that was hard for me to accept because at that time, I'm talking about mid-20s, I worked 2-3 jobs. I know that sounds crazy, but my goal was to be somebody, right? Something in my career. And that's what we're taught to do, right? Like work hard and you get a house. Work hard and you make good money. Work hard. Like, no, my body was not letting me. My mind was no longer letting me. My skin was taking over. Pain was taking over. Dizziness, nausea, just everything started piling on top of each other. I started to have blurred vision. So 2019 is the end of 2019. And I literally, for the past like 2 years, so let's actually say 2016 to 2019, that's when everything got worse with like my vision and joints and pains and skin all over my face, all over my scalp, on my legs, arms, hands. Like this is where it's like it is what it is today. And I say, I need to go to the doctor. Actually, it was one night in the middle of the night, I could not sleep. This is a lot of times. Like I literally have sleeping issues still to this day. But like my chest was hurting. I kept shaking. So for the first time in a very long time, because I'm not someone to run up in the emergency room and work in a few hours, I went to the emergency room. I felt so terrible. I mean, I was having chest pains. So they told me I was having heart palpitations. I had a really high heart rate. And I'm trying to think of what the solution was. Oh, to see a specialist. And I think that was like in October. Come November, it still kept happening. Like I would have like on top of the dizziness and the pains and the numbness in certain body parts, and I was having chest pains now. So now I'm like, I just wanted to lie down in bed all day in the dark with like a fan on me because I would get hot a lot. Like that's another thing. Couldn't eat, couldn't cook for myself no more. Completely like loss of appetite, dizziness, nausea, dizzy spells. It's just like when I told the doctors about this eventually, my best way to describe it is like I felt like I was on a roller coaster. And when you're in a roller coaster, it's like you're going and then you go up, but then you go down, and then you might go around a little, but then eventually it's going to come to a stop and then you get off. Well, it's like not being able to get off and going back up and down and around and going up and down and around. And so it's like, all right, something needs to stop. Like if this is a skin condition, if this is just a rash that there's no cure for, what is this, that, and this, and that, and this, and that? And I had no one to ask because I didn't have no one to ask. I didn't have literally no one to ask. So I ended up finding a primary care provider that I thought, well, one that was close to my house that I thought could assist me. It comes to find out he was actually a geriatric doctor, but I think that was the best decision I ever made. And I don't know. I mean, I didn't know much about how to find a good doctor back then, but I landed myself on a good one because, long story short, when I told him everything I was going through, at first he was like, whoa, like, one thing at a time. And, you know, we didn't have a relationship. It was my first time meeting this doctor. So he could think I'm like is it a hypochondriac? Like, just someone, or, you know, the other condition where you think you have all these type of conditions. Again, I'm having major brain farts, major brain fog. But he said I have a lot of things going on. He did give me like another EKG. He did a bunch of blood work, which he did in his own office. Like, they had a lab, which I was so grateful for, especially for the EKG machine. Then he wrote me referrals to a radiologist. And at that point, I was at my wit's end. Like, I literally think I was even crying on that visit. I just was so lost and confused health-wise. And I was finally telling a doctor what I'm going through. It was my first time. And let's just say the results came back. And that is where I'm at today. From 2019, fast forward today, I've been on my health journey to now actually find the diagnosis for what I'm going through. I didn't want a diagnosis. I never want to have a label put on. I don't want a timeline of when this may heal or news that it may not. I don't want to know if I have another condition, but it got to the point that I needed to know. And I'm still on that journey today. I'll make another video to explain more the other journeys I'm on and the other discoveries I found out since 2019. But let's just say this, or let me just say this. I lived for so long in silence and in pain. I became a shell of myself. I became someone that was a social butterfly, living in a big city, to someone who literally ghosted the world. Like, I disappeared off of social media. I disappeared from family or friends. I disappeared from the career I was so committed to. I stopped all my hobbies. I basically completely left behind who I was and was always and was meant to be because of psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, and whatever other conditions I may have, which I actually don't even care for. And I'm here to gain that all back because it wouldn't be right for me to live my life letting something that should be temporary just take over. Everyone has a purpose. I have a purpose, and I'm not going to give up. A lot of what I went through, it may sound to you like depression. I'm not going to lie and tell you that I don't or didn't have depression or don't have depression, but this is what I told the doctors when I started seeing them. When they asked me if, like, oh, are you on medication for depression? Do you see a psychologist or psychiatrist? What I tell them is, when I'm sick, that causes me stress, anxiety, and depression. Like, when I'm not feeling good, or the times mentally I can feel the depression. There are many times I pretend like I don't have this. I don't have these aches and pains and all these new symptoms. There are times. And for a little sliver in time, I do feel happiness. I don't dwell on what I have. I know it's there. It's like living in me rent free. I know it's there. But in order for me to do anything, I have to completely pretend it's not. And around 2019, where I was like physically falling in front of people, and I just couldn't fake it anymore. I couldn't cover this up anymore. Like, I just couldn't cover up what is there. That little light switch, I called it a light switch, I would turn off when I was in public to pretend like I'm normal. It was broken. I couldn't say I'm normal today and I'm not tomorrow, I'm normal today. That switch was broken. It said, you are not normal. You're meant to be this way. You're meant to share this. This is your story. This is your journey. And ever since then, I have become more vocal in a different way. I am very sheltered and quiet, like socially, but I am very vocal, even just the way I speak to myself. I tell myself words of encouragement. I tell myself words and phrases to soothe myself. Like, literally, I started to teach myself self-love. I stopped covering up with makeup. I stopped covering up. I just stopped pretending I'm normal because I'm not. So anyways, I'll make another video about my other new journeys that I've been on. As hard as it is to swallow something you don't want to swallow, I am going to see these doctors because part of self-love, well, you can say self-love is loving yourself, right? There's more to it than that. But part of self-love is loving yourself. And if I love myself, what are you going to do for yourself? You're going to take care of yourself. Like, think of it on the outside looking in. I looked at myself on the outside looking at me, and I felt so bad for myself. So I am on this journey because I do love myself. And so I'm not going to limit myself anymore. I shouldn't have to, think of my past and look at my future and be like, wow, you couldn't do this, this, and this, and this because you didn't let yourself. Did you not let yourself, or this condition didn't let you? You know what? Who's in control, right? I'm in control of my life, and I have to be my own advocate for myself. When I tell you, it takes so much work especially when you're not feeling good and you have bills to pay and you have to be your own nurse, your own health advocate. You have to nurse yourself. Like, I literally have to, there were times I had to bandage up my hands with gauze and waterproof tape and gloves and go out in public because I had nail psoriasis too, My nails were falling off. So at those times, I had to love myself so much and just encourage myself, just do it and get out there and do what you have to do and go to work with gloves on. And I did. I had to do what I had to do. And I will continue to, and I'm not going to give up. Because if I were to give up, I wouldn't be here sharing this story. So that is not the goal, and that is not the solution. And so this is just a moment in time. I honestly can say I've let my youth slip away. I mean, from 14 to now, I lived in silence. I lived in pain. And they say it's never too late. So I'm starting now. And you can too.